Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. Happy last day of 2020. Thank the Lord. Yes, we can all celebrate, lift our glasses, although this is water. I'll be lifting something a little
tea.
Yeah, a little harder alcohol-wise around.
That's later. I got that in the fridge.
Yeah. Okay. Before we start our official pre-show, if we get to later this tonight, I mean, a lot of people were drinking champagne. What will be your chosen beverage be tonight?
I've got a beer from like one of the fancy schmancy places around here, a local IPA, and it's like a 16 ounce. And these days, that's good. I'm good.
My in-laws tend to bring, again, they've always set us over because they're being Russian, my in-laws being Russian, that they celebrate New Year's the way that Americans celebrate Christmas. So it's kind of a stretched out holiday for us, but champagne is obviously involved. They always bring, they always will bring a bottle of that over. So we're definitely going to, say goodbye to 2020 that way.
Jan?
Nothing planned right now.
Okay, well, but normally
have some wine in the house. Have a good Cabernet that I like a lot. I may just have a glass of that. I mean, I may go out and get a beer. I'm only really like wheat beer for the most part, so I may go out and see if there's anything that's worthwhile to get. I kind of just ran out the other day of what we had, so I may go out and just get that and kind of play it by ear.
Yeah, I've been for Christmas Eve and after dealing with my family for Christmas, I cracked open a bottle of Woodford Reserve, nice Kentucky bourbon, and I got one of those, the big the big ice cubes that you put in. You basically
those massive ice cubes.
Yeah, it's like about 1.5 inches square. So you put that in and pour like about maybe this much of that, and it chills it so nice. And I'll just sit back and relax and.
I had a bad experience with Jack Daniels once. I go nowhere near any of them.
I hate Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels gives me the worst case of heartburn in the world.
The only thing I drink is single malt Scotch, so anything like Jack Daniels or blended or rye or bourbon, not my thing. Give me a Cardew or a Lagavulin, Doublewood or a Macallan, but more so Cardew. I've had Oban Little Bay, which is really good. So
Lagavulin
scotches that I could have later also.
That's my chosen one. Is Lagavulin.
And for me,
I go Scotch drinker.
For me, it's usually beer. Wife and I are very fond of Rieslings. We tend to eat mostly fish and chicken for the most part, so work goes well there.
That's the sweet. Riesling's the sweet stuff.
He does, yeah. It's good. Yeah. This one's actually nice and balanced, Dr. Lucen. And then the one I had, the one liquor thing I drink is Captain Morgan Private Stock rum.
Okay.
It's usually with a Coke.
All right. Let's start us off the pre-show.
Yeah. Wanted to mention Becky Hammon, actually a Spurs assistant coach, got to coach yesterday because Greg Popovich can never keep his mouth shut. But this time he did something good by not keeping his mouth shut. He made some history. He probably wasn't thinking about it at the time that he probably had a tirade. He always has. I didn't watch the game, but I do think it's great that she got in there and she got to coach the first NBA game. And that's fantastic. I mean, you have to wonder, like, do you think it ran through Popovich's mind at any point when he hired her that this would happen? And
I think there was always that possibility. I mean, he did. I mean, he did have a pretty extensive staff last year. He had, when he was thrown out previously, Tim Duncan had been an assistant coach for them. He was calling the plays when Pop was ejected last year.
Because he gets ejected a few times a year, doesn't he?
Duncan. Yeah, he always does. Yeah. Duncan, again, not with them this year. And again, Hammond has got head coaching experience, coaching in the NBA Summer League. So this is, she's been at this for a while now. Yeah. And again, I found it kind of obviously the Reuters headline she directed. I'm like, no, that's not directing. That's you are coaching the team.
You're coaching. There's no other coach. You're the coach.
I didn't understand that. It was like I was like, Reuters, you got to do better than that. Yeah. I mean,
she is prime coaching material. There's no question.
I think she's got every bit. She's interviewed for 2 jobs so far, including Indiana.
Play for the Liberty, coaching the summer leagues. Obviously, if Pop is keeping her on her staff, that's evident of just how highly given how good of a coach he is, and given the fact that he turned over some of the stuff day to day in terms of responsibilities to her as well. So the only question is an owner willing to go to that level to take the shot on hiring her? But if they do, she clearly knows the game. She clearly knows how to motivate. and she clearly knows how to design game plans.
And she's a star, and she was also, again, she was a star player in her league. She is an all-time, and she walks. If there's anybody who's going to walk into a locker room, in a men's locker room in this case, in the NBA, and be able to immediately garner respect.
Right.
Becky Hammon, Becky will be the first. I have no doubt in my mind she'll be the first female NBA head coach. Not a doubt.
Russ, I don't think Popovich was doing a Gene Hackman from Hoosiers where he purposely gets thrown out to let Dennis coach the team.
And they didn't run the picket fence.
And they didn't run the picket fence. Thank you, Gene. You stole my line. But I will say this: she has got more experience and more of a resume to be a head coach than Steve Nash does, who's the coach.
Precisely. Yep.
So
Nash is a whole different situation why he got hired, and we all know why.
Yeah, but
it's the relationship with Durant.
Sure. But that being said, I'm just saying, he didn't I don't think he had any experience as he's a phenomenal player, Hall of Fame caliber player, but coaching wise, he didn't have a lot of experience, if any. So.
But he's also brought in experienced assistants. He was a star point guard in the league, right? He's well respected around the league. He actually did work a little bit with the Warriors while Durant was there, so we picked up learning from Kerr as well. Mm-hmm. Look, I don't have a problem them giving Nash the job. Granted, a lot of it is relationship management now anyway, but if you're talking pure, quote-unquote, coaching chops, Hammon has it all over Nash in terms of coaching chops.
No, I was just making the comparison. There was literally no criticism of Nash being hired in Brooklyn because Nash is a great player and, of all the things that you just discussed in terms of relationships. But, I think it's a little sexist. Oh, well, she's not credited. Yeah, she's got the chops. I think eventually she'll get a job, and that'll be great. So, and then she will be criticized or applauded based on her record and not on her sex. So, anyway. All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, December 31st, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine, and thank God the year is ending.
I'm Anthony Mangione. Hope everybody's going to have a pleasant, healthy new year.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology was searching to see how many ejections Popovich has in his career, but I can't find the number. Oh, well.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I'm having a strip steak and some baked potato and some sauteed mushrooms tonight for my last dinner of 2020. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. I'm sure everybody really wanted to know what I had.
Mike, sauteed mushrooms is a condiment.
No, it's not.
No, we had it as if you do it. Listen, when my wife, you saw the birthday meal my wife made. It was a fillet with a garlic sauteed mushrooms on the side.
Yeah, that sauce is a condiment. I just want to let Mike know that because he says he doesn't like.
We're talking about actual mushrooms, though.
Yeah, no.
I got a little concerned when Mike started out. I'm having strip, and I got a little concerned until he said the word steak. So I wasn't sure where he was going with that.
Believe me, if I was going that,
it's December 31st, 2020. Anything goes.
The year has
everybody's scrambling off this podcast right now. All right, let's start with the news that broke at the very end of the show yesterday. All kudos to Ken Campbell of the Hockey News, who broke the story of Zdeno Chara signing with the Washington Capitals. It's a 1-year deal for $795K with some bonuses for games played, for making the playoffs, and for winning the Stanley Cup. In total, I think it was like 1.5 million. We have to say, Jan, Russ, myself, Anthony wasn't on the show as much as normally he'd like to be. But when we were talking about Chara and the fact that he hadn't signed, all of us were basically saying, we don't think he's going back because
we thought he was
happened.
No, that was just a matter of where he was going to land as far as I was concerned. There's professional pride involved after a while. You can only have so much patience for so long. And again, the Bruins made it very obvious from jump here that they weren't interested in bringing Chara. They were, at $795,000 on a 1-year deal, and you don't bring him back. No, it's very obvious the way that the Bruins were ready to end that relationship.
And based on Jan, based on the statement that Chara made and on Instagram yesterday, and what he furthered in his media availability today, he said the Bruins were sort of upfront with him that they were going to move on, that they were looking to play some of their younger defensemen. Now, I don't know whether that makes a lot of sense, because I still think at 43, Chara is a very effective defenseman, but you probably have to continue to play him in a top 4 role, playing around 20 minutes. And if they were going to sort of move on and let Jeremy Lawson or Vakanainen, their former first-round pick, if they were going to give them top 4 minutes, then you were going to be relegating Chara to 15, 16 minutes a night, and I don't think you do that to a Hall of Famer.
Well, that's part of the reason why Chara said he wasn't going back there, is they already indicated to him they were going to be cutting back his minutes. Right. Look, I understand you want to see your younger defensemen grow, but I'm not sure if either one of those guys are. Look, Grzelcyk actually obviously panned out. McAvoy is going to have to take a major step forward with Krug gone, but now you've lost 2 of your top 4 in this offseason. You lost the real veteran presence that existed on the blue line that would have helped make up for Krug's absence in order to help get those guys to that next level. So who's going to be the veteran guy you're now relying on your blue line to help train some of the younger guys to get to that next level? You've now lost that cushion, and you're flying basically without a safety net below you. And you also have to recognize that Pasternak and Marchand are likely starting the season on injured reserve as well. So Boston's got a wee bit of an uphill battle. Look, we all think they're a good team, but with the East being as tough as it is, and now given all the guys that they've lost and the guys who are out to start the year, Boston's got a little bit of an uphill battle now to actually make one of those 4 playoff spots, though I think they still will.
Yeah. I mean, look, Chara trained Carlo and McAvoy to speed up their entry into the league, and it worked out. Now they don't have anybody they can do that with, especially with Krug gone. But, for Sweeney to say we offered him a contract months ago and told him the terms, we knew what the terms were going to be, and we knew that's why he wasn't going back. This guy wants to play. He wants to play real minutes. He doesn't want to play on a bottom pairing for like 10 minutes a night and then have a Chara night and then just go into the night. That's not what his plan is for himself.
Now, right. I would add one more thing as well, that now Chara's going to be in an interesting spot here with Washington. They actually have a little bit of a crowded blue line now. Right. Although we would say quality-wise, after you get past the top 3 of Carlson, Dillon, and Orlov, it gets questionable. But Schultz, Jensen, Van Riemsdyk, and Siegenthaler all have to figure into the mix there. So it makes for a rather interesting spot here, especially now. A few of those guys probably are looking at taxi squad, probably. Well,
let's say this. Let's say this, Anthony. I know for a fact, based on talking to people who cover the Capitals and just the buzz after they signed Jensen to that extension, that he's been a big disappointment for them. They bring Van Riemsdyk in as a UFA from Carolina. Siegenthaler is a developmental guy. I would think as a 1 year guy that Chara is going to be ahead of Siegenthaler, ahead of.
I would expect that. I would expect Siegenthaler to definitely be on the taxi squad to start the year.
I think he's going to be on the second pair with Orlov. That's where I think Chara's going to be.
Yeah, I think so too. That's where I think he ends up. He ends up on the second pair, and then
that's a pair you don't want to face. They're physical. There's some speed there with Orlov.
There's speed. The key thing is, again, with Chara is going to be, in terms of my biggest concern there, because Orlov loves to pinch, is I worry about gap control because of Chara's Chara. Let's face it, at this point, his lack of foot speed at this point, that could be a potential
I think
problem.
What they're going to do, I could see Laviolette, especially early in the season, going with 7. Not Laviolette. Laviolette.
No, you got it right. You got it right, Lavi. It's Lavi.
It just seems weird still. I could see them going with 7D early on. I could see that.
They could.
Well, switching back to the Bruins for a second. Elliot Friedman had something really interesting this morning that he said on Toronto radio. He was basically showing or reflecting on the reaction of the Bruins after they got eliminated by Tampa Bay, and there was a feeling that he got, and then a number of people got, that was sort of the end of an era, and you couldn't really put your finger on it at that point, but then you look at what's happened since then. Krug has gone to St. Louis. Now Chara has signed with Washington. Tuukka Rask is 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, and a lot of people think he might retire or go someplace else. You've got Pasternak and Marchand coming off injuries; they may not play until February. And now, without Chara, you look at the defense, and it's McAvoy, it's the recently re-signed Mac Grzelcyk, Brandon Carlo, but that's the top three. Then you have Vakanainen, John Moore, who's been a disappointment since they signed him there. Oh, yeah. Connor Clifton has been sort of in and out of the lineup like a seventh defenseman type. Jeremy Lawson came up at the end of the year. Kevin Miller, who was injured for most of the year. I mean, it's not that area that they were always rock solid in on the blue line. It's nowhere close to rock solid in.
So, and this is it, Mike. Here's the quote that tells you why Chara went out the door. It was quote unquote an integrated role. When you just named the defenseman that you named, and Chara's looking at that and saying, seriously, an integrated role? Like, I don't have definite minutes and I'm not going to play 14 minutes a game. Forget it. Yeah, that's where I think Boston has got it wrong here.
Right? How is he still not in the top four?
I know.
I mean, we've been saying that all along, right? Yeah. I mean, you just enumerated who they have and listed, right? When you get past that top three, does any of the other three go, oh, yeah, they clearly deserve a spot in the day-to-day lineup? So the flip side is they're weak defensively. Granted, optics will be very bad, but do they pivot and go after Sami Vatanen now to try to fill a hole in that blue line?
Yeah, but the question is, and we talked about this yesterday, is Vatanen, is he open to a 1 year deal, or is Boston looking to sign him long, or any team that's interested?
Is he getting a long-term deal for somebody? Or people –
or are you willing to, again, if you're Boston, are you willing to try to barring an injury at this point now, they're probably not willing to necessarily integrate another defenseman in unless it's absolutely necessary at this point. You would think, looking at personnel wise, that they would be, but this is true of a lot of teams. Again, a team like Philadelphia, for example, could have easily gone after a Chara in this circumstance, their blue line, but again, could be internal budgets as well, but again,
no, I think that plays into it.
You're right. That goes into the fact as well, and we'll see what happens there.
And plus, also think about it, right? I'm sure we'll get to it, right? Take a look at we'll get to it more. What Vince Dunn just got. Are you giving Sami Vatanen a lot more than you would give Vince Dunn?
Well, no. but okay. I was going to mention.
Again, I'm talking dollars and cents, right? You're comparing apples and oranges in terms.
No. I granted, but I was going to mention Vince Dunn a little down the line.
Well, mention Dunn in a minute, Mike. Since we'll get to St. Louis. The last thing on Boston here is, look, I think some of those defensemen are fine, but they are a year away from being a lot better than they're going to be this year. Boston, this is a tough year for Boston now because they're in the Metro. Yep. They're missing guys at the beginning. There's no Chara or Krug. Their blue line's not as good. They could struggle to make the playoffs. This is the first year we're probably going to say that now.
I mean, Russ, this could be the year where Boston sort of imitates Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, they've been good for like the last decade, but they've had years where injuries hit them. Where they finished with a bottom three pick and they got Drouin. They had those years where all of a sudden they disappeared off the face of the earth in terms of being a quality team, and then the next year they were right back because everybody was back healthy. So, I mean, maybe a year where the Bruins say 56 games, players injured, older goaltender. We're going to sort of, feel our oats, see what Vakanainen does.
Mike, this is the year the Leafs could have beat them, and now they won't play them.
He always has to do that, right? Anthony always has to stick the knife and twist. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Vince Dunn because that was announced this morning. Vince Dunn, who was an RFA, signs a 1 year deal for it was a little under $2 million. And Russ, what I think this is the defensive version of the Kevin LeBanc deal. This is okay. Wait until the Steam deal is on LTIR. Wait until the money from the Steam deal. Wait till the money from other deals are off the books, and we'll be good to you, Vince. But this year, we're going to pay you only what we can pay you.
Yeah, look, Armstrong's built up a lot of goodwill with his players, and rightly so. The Cup's not that far away. They have great personnel. They love their coach. Dunn, he's a team guy. You knew he wasn't going anywhere. When I kept hearing about what's going to happen with their defense and who's going to leave and who's going to stay, I really never thought Dunn was leaving because as a defenseman, he's a lot different than what they have. He is. And in the end, he'll get his contract. He's going to still have to prove himself. He's going to still have to have, 30 points or more because he is looked at for offense. But at the end of the day, this is exactly what they need. And this will keep St. Louis really competitive.
So let's spitball, right? What Schwartz comes off the books, it's $5.3 million. Bozak comes off the book, it's another $5 million. Tarasenko's on LTIR right now. Steen is on LTIR right now.
Right.
So if they sign this deal with the tacit, quote unquote, agreement to sign him, let's say in January or February when they can.
Right.
What kind of contract are you giving him? 311, 313, 417?
It depends on what year.
It depends on the year. Yeah, it really does.
So you got 3 or 4 years. What are you giving him as an AAV? 4, 4.5?
I think you're giving him more than Devin Taves got from Colorado, which is in the 4 to 5 range.
I was going to say probably about maybe somewhere in the 4.5 range. I would say for Dunn. I would say
so
that
418 maybe.
Well, here's the thing.
Justin
Falk's making 5.1, so you can't go there. Even though Dunn is trending up more than Justin Falk these days, so it's probably going to be in that 4 range.
Yeah, I mean the Falk contract stunk. I mean, I think we all agree that.
We all agree, but it doesn't matter. They're not going to exceed it anyhow.
Right.
I mean, Falk could be exposed to Seattle. You don't know. We don't know what.
He probably will be, but it doesn't mean they'll take him.
Right, but the thing is, it's like, okay, they traded for and signed Scandella. They've got 2 more years on Parayko's deal. They have Krug and Falk locked up for 7 years. They have Perunovic, who, maybe they give him a look. Maybe he's a guy who goes taxi squad to
NHL. He'll probably be a taxi squad guy.
Right, but then they have Gunnarsson and Bertuzzo as depth defensemen. But for next year, it's not just I mean, I think they're going to try to re-sign Schwartz.
They will.
But they'll probably let Bozak go, and then they have to come up on Bennington's contract. And he's a UFA, and I mean, if he has a good year, they're gonna have to pay him, and it's not gonna be $4.4 million.
I give kudos to Bozak, man. He's had a nice, long, good career. He won't make that $5 million anymore, though. He won't.
No, he won't. But the thing is, I think he proved he was misapplied in Toronto as a number one center.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
He was able to adjust to being a depth center, a 2 or 3. He's never been great defensively, but he's a good teammate. He's a good quality player.
Good on faceoffs too, isn't he, Mike?
What's that?
He's good on faceoffs too.
He's pretty good on faceoffs. Yeah, I think he fits the depth center role, and he can provide offense. He did that in the playoffs when they won the cup. So I think he'll get a job. I just don't.
He'll get a job.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, St. Louis, and what we're not talking about here also is Hoffman. The reports are that Hoffman's going to get probably in the $4 million range, or 4 to 4.5. I did see one little thing about St. Louis that was interesting from a Russian newspaper, Anthony, where Tarasenko was quoted as saying, well, me and Jaden Schwartz have been in St. Louis for like 7 years or 8 years, and they made Ryan O'Reilly the captain after 2 years. He wasn't ripping on O'Reilly, but I think he was saying that, were we
under consideration for
I think to be lead? I think it's fair for him to say that.
Yeah, I think so. I would agree with that it's kind of fair to wonder again. I know, Rob, but again, when you look at how much of a jump St. Louis had with O'Reilly added. I mean, granted, they had let's face it, the year they won the cup, they had a extremely disappointing first half of the season, and then just came on like gangbusters. But at the end of the day, O'Reilly's been a huge part of their ascension into the upper reaches.
Yeah, but Tarasenko's saying you brought in an outsider. And you made him the captain. You didn't even consider us, and we've been here busting it for all these years. It's a fair point to make, especially for Tarasenko, because I know some people look at him and say, "Oh, he gets injured or whatever." But
that would be the counterpoint to say
that it doesn't mean he's not a good leader.
No, it doesn't mean he's not a good leader. But again, at the end of the day, you're going to have to say that the leader's got to be there pretty regularly.
Yeah, we don't. Again, I would probably put Schwartz above Tarasenko in terms of a leader. But Schwartz also has had his injury history as well.
Sure.
Forcing him to miss substantive time when he's been there. And as you said, Anthony, the upward ascension of St. Louis came when O'Reilly was there. Granted, not immediately. But if you look at a guy who portrays captain material, on paper, he would seem to be the guy that you would pencil in to give him the seat.
And when you think about it, it's a pretty remarkable turn considering things that happened in Buffalo when he first arrived to where he is now. It's an amazing change for him.
Now this surprises me. Alan Savage says Schwartz doesn't wear a letter. I've never noticed. Yeah, but I got to tell you that surprises me because he is a really good team player. He is thought of very well in that room from what I could see. And he's a heck of a player. He really is.
And the last thing they're going to do is make somebody a team captain who's in the last year of their contract before free agency after their last captain walked away in free agency. I think they would want somebody who's got term, and that would either be, O'Reilly's got 2 more years after this year, or Braden Shen or Krug or Falk. But, it makes the most sense to make O'Reilly the captain.
Yeah, so. I'm not sure if walked away is the right term because they clearly could have brought him back, but they opted to go.
But they opted not to. They didn't want. I mean, please, with all the players that went on LTIR, there is no excuse for St. Louis not signing Pietrangelo. The excuse is they didn't want to pay him signing bonuses, which he wanted in the deal, and Vegas would. So that was they have nobody on their roster, not a one, except for O'Reilly, and that deal was they took over from the Buffalo trade. They have nobody on their roster that has $1 of signing bonus. That's just their philosophy. So.
Well, we got to also say this. I mean, St. Louis, while it's a decent hockey market, they're not as good or financially set as Vegas is.
And they have the oldest building in the NHL, too.
Right. It's not a bad building. Like when I was in there, I was shocked how well it's maintained considering the age on it. I actually thought it looks pretty good on the inside.
I feel strange saying at this point now that this is also a reflection again on our age now at this point that St. Louis's arena, which we all remember being opened up, now all of a sudden is this, it's
Wells Fargo, I think, is like the 3rd oldest.
It is, at this point now. You just have to continue to make improvements to it. Because,
right. But the idea is they don't have the same access to that extra cash that Vegas does, and I can't rip the organization for not wanting to give those bonuses in years where there's no fans. It's hard. I'm not going to give them a hard time over that.
Funky in the chat is asking, isn't MSG the oldest? But they remodeled it.
Yeah, but they remodeled it. The $1 billion makeover, and so it doesn't catch.
It's over 50 years old, but the problem is with the remodeling, as Ross can attest to, the acoustics have changed substantially.
Oh, yeah.
And also, you think about it, the demographics of who attends the game has changed. So it's a much different environment attending games now than it was before. The blue seats are no longer the blue seats. They don't have that home ice advantage that you used to have years ago, given you used to sit there.
Yeah, I don't know this to be true, Jan, but even the wood that we love, the pattern on the ceiling, that looks to be more synthetic than it used to look real wood, and that probably does affect things too.
The acoustics have completely changed in that place. The cacophony of noise that existed when the place got really rocking doesn't really exist.
It might as well be a brand. It may as well just inside the area that is Madison Square Garden. It might as well be a new arena.
Here's an indication of how old I am. It's like the Air Canada Center opened in '99. I was at the KeyBank Center when it was under Marine Midland Arena when it opened up. I think it was 95 or 96. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 of the oldest buildings in the NHL, and they're only 20 to 25 years old. So there's been a lot of changeover. So, moving to players that have not signed their contracts. Pierre LeBrun reported earlier this morning, and this has to be a concern for Columbus Blue Jackets fans. Pierre-Luc Dubois is not in Columbus. Camp is opening this weekend. He remains unsigned, and now there are rumblings from a few teams around the league that Dubois may be looking for a change of scenery. Maybe wishful thinking on their part, blah, 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 blah. He furthered that report to say just a few minutes ago that he received a text message from Jarmo Kekalainen, the Blue Jackets general manager, saying that he remains confident that he will get a contract done with Dubois before camp starts.
I'm going to say this. I've known Jarmo for a lot of years. He's been on my show many times. He is the most approachable and vocal GM in the league. And it doesn't surprise me that he instantly texted him to give his side of it.
His ears were burning.
At the end of the day, Dubois has a little bit of leverage, more than most, because that team really does need him. They don't have a guy like him. But again, with the coach that they have, he'll get asked the question once, and Tortorella will basically say he doesn't need him. Like, that's it. Like, at some point he will just.
I will deal with the guys that are here.
That's it.
Period. End of line.
I only want to talk about who's here. That's what he'll say.
Yes.
Publicly, he'll say that.
Publicly. Yes.
Privately, I'm sure he's pounding to try to get PLD in, especially given the ascension we saw out of him last year.
I don't know if he cares that much. Like, he loves the player. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think John Tortorella is going to sweat 2 minutes privately.
I don't think this is. I also will say I don't think this is quite the same situation as Vinny LeCavalier, and I know Joe Yerdon, who we all know, obviously brought that up, and he says it's not the same torch as back then, but he will box that out and compartmentalize and say, when I will deal with the players that are here.
Yeah. Well, here's the question, because we won't know this until the deal is signed. What is Jarmo going for in terms of the new deal with Pierre-Luc Dubois? I would think that they'd be going for like the 6-year deal that Marner or Matthews or Matthews.
You can afford to give him that money.
Yes,
but he supposedly wants a long-term deal. According to Pagnotta, I think PLD wants a shorter-term deal, and Columbus wants a longer-term deal, right. And that's kind of part of the sticking point as to where they're not matching.
Mike, it may say on the cap that they can afford it, but that's a team before fans that was having some financial struggles.
Right, but in the short term, they might not be able to afford it. But
that's my point. I think they're going to want to keep that AAV as low as they can, and I think that's what's causing the problem. I don't blame them either. Like, you can't just hand over $8 million a year to Pierre-Luc Dubois. He hasn't proved it enough for that.
They already made that mistake down the line with Ryan Johansson, so they're probably not going to want. But the thing is, he's got 4 years until unrestricted free agency. So if you sign into a 6-year deal, you're buying unrestricted years. You're probably going to end up paying in that $7 to $8 million range.
Give him 7 for whatever years he wants.
Right, but if Matt Barzal, and the rumor is out there that Matt Barzal is willing to take a 3-year deal from the Islanders for around $6 million, which is more than Cirelli made with Tampa Bay, but not as much as Braden Point made with Tampa Bay. Then I don't think that helps Dubois when it comes to what he's going to be asking for.
Well, it depends now who signs first, because if Dubois would have signed first for, let's say, 7, that would put a crimp in the Islanders' plans for sure. And this is why they should be. I mean, maybe they can't. Maybe they have to wait for camp to open because of the LTIR, but they need to jump on the Barzal thing if they haven't already, because this could make it worse.
But they're right now. The Columbus Blue Jackets have only 3 players signed.
No, I was just saying in the chat room.
The Columbus Blue Jackets have only 3 players signed past next year: Cam Atkinson, Gustav Nyquist, and Gavrikov. That means the goalies. That means Seth Jones. That means Werenski. All of them either UFA or RFA after next season.
That's a lot of money in 1 year, though. It is.
Right. Now, that might be the concern, Anthony, is the fact that they know they're probably going to have to – they probably are not going to be able to afford both of those defensemen, that they're probably going to have to choose one or the other and pay either Jones or Werenski big money to stay in Columbus. I don't know which one it'll be. I would think it would be Jones, but
Jones, I think, has it's a real weird spot there for Columbus, because again, they drafted Werenski, they've developed him, he's been exactly everything I think that they've hoped he would be at this point of his career. I think it's tough, for Columbus to remain, in competition if they don't have both of them. Mm-hmm. I think you put a lot on both of their shoulders. I think the two of them together make the other effective based off of that, and they can maintain. They're going to, in my opinion, I think Columbus has to figure out a way to be able to have both of those guys in there as their 1 and 1A, as the pillars of that team going forward. I don't think
you're talking about whatever he's getting this year and giving those two guys top of the market money. That is a lot for this team.
It's going to be a lot, but they're going to have to, again, if they're going to be competitive, I think they have to figure it out, or they have to redistribute and figure out who it will be. If it's me, I'm going to say of the two, I probably keep Jones, because I think Jones is a little bit more complete as a defenseman than Werenski.
More minutes, and Torts is going to load minutes on him if he doesn't have Werenski.
Right.
They also free up $11 million in salary with Dubinsky and Foligno coming off the books. But on the flip side, you're going to have to pay. If Borkstrand plays like he did last year, he's in line for a decent raise also. You got to pay him. But look, Lykvist is basically missing most of the year. So you're paying him, you're putting him on LTIR. He's got 2 more years after that. You got Domi for another year at about $5.3 million. So there is cap space available. Look, they don't have guys in the system anywhere near the level of ilk that they have with Jones and with Werenski. Obviously, at Savard, they just got rid of Ryan Murray to the Devils, who had
they saved money there
to free up some cap room. So if you got two guys at that level, and they especially if they want to stay, I think you have to try every way possible to keep those guys under contract there.
Well, I'll tell you one place where they're probably going to end up saving money, and that's in 2 years. You've got Korpisalo and you've got Elvis as UFAs. More than likely, after those 2 years, Tarasov, their prospect goaltender, will be probably ready to put him in the NHL. So they may keep one of those guys. They probably won't keep both of them, and then they'll have Tarasov on an entry-level contract for 2 or 3 years. So,
we'll see if they lose one. Although Merzlikins doesn't have to be protected.
Yeah, no, they don't have to expose one.
Korpisalo can be protected, so they're going to be able to keep both of them anyway.
But maybe they trade. Maybe they trade one of them.
They definitely could still trade one. The big thing is I don't think Columbus was going to spend to the cap this year. I'd said it. Dubois is going to make them inch closer to that. There's no question about it. But you know what? I could see Dubois missing half to 3/4 of camp, and again, then Torts is going to hold it against them in the early part of the season too. Like that's going to be because Torts didn't Dubinsky hold out on Torts. Somebody held out on Torts.
It might have been maybe with the Rangers. Maybe
with the Rangers. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, but you could just see Torts going if he has a bad game in it and goes. He was in camp on time and had been in better shape. This would have happened.
Well, it's just it's like a classic school teacher saying, "Well, you missed time. You had unexcused absences. Got some work to do, kid. Better get caught up on that."
See, that's when I hated teachers. Thank you for saying that.
My dad was a teacher.
I don't care. I didn't know your dad.
But you know me.
Yeah.
Anthony has
anybody amongst the audience that wasn't aware of one of my main area of in addition to obviously writing and podcasting, everything else is I am a social studies teacher in Philadelphia. So
practice that rhetoric in front of the
Sorry, Jim.
Switching to the World Junior, and I have to say I was glad, not that it was late, but I was glad that I was aware and stayed up to watch Russia-Sweden. But we'll hold off on that one for a second. The 3 games yesterday, Finland beat Slovakia 6-0. Germany held on against Switzerland 5-4.
Tremendous game. I was like,
finally, right? Finally got a game that is worthy of the World Junior.
And held on is the apt description, given what that score was and where it ended up.
The Germans were up 4-0, I believe, and the Swiss just charged back in the third. They got to 5-4, and actually had a really good scoring chance. About a minute left to go with the goalie pulled. But Germany held on, and now they'll make the quarterfinals for the first time in history, I believe. Right?
Yeah, I was. It's funny when we did the Hockey Prospect radio show. Shane asked me to pick a team that I felt was a dark horse, and I said Germany. But little did I know, like after I picked it, they would quarantine everybody.
You thought you meant dark chocolate instead of dark horse.
No, but honestly, if I knew they were quarantining everybody, I don't know if I would have picked them. But the reason I picked them was because I felt like they did have a decent goalie, and they had Tim Stützle, and they had JJ Peterka. And at the end of the
amazing what happens when you have a full. It's amazing when you have a full lineup.
Yeah, but those guys, I mean, Stützle really put on a show, and Peterka really did show his shot. And Mike asked me the question, how did he get to where he did in the draft? And it's just simply because he's not a complete player, Peterka. But in a tournament like this, they don't need him to be a complete player. They need him to show his offense, and he's got plenty of it. It was a big win for them. Like, I was really happy for Germany. I was like, you know what? This was cool. And then the next game, that game was unbelievable. Askarov played so well. I don't care how many goals he gave up. Russia was just so dumb, and I guess it was the second period.
Discipline is what's going to hurt them. Again, if Larionov doesn't reel them in on the discipline front, it's one thing for a team to sort of, they all seem to, love Larionov for the freedom that he gives you. Well, with that comes, for you to win this tournament, you're going to have to rein in some of the things that they've been doing so far.
Well, the one thing, though, Brian Burke talked about this on Hockey Central today, in reviewing the replay of that penalty, and the one that looked really glaringly bad was Abramov, the leap on, I can't remember the Swedish player who basically is like the next Thomas Holmstrom. He's a pain.
Yeah. He's a draft.
It's about Soderblom?
No, not Soderblom.
No, something like that.
Somebody in the chat will know, but this guy is an antagonist. And when they showed the replay,
It was a dive. It was not.
Oh no, Kosmar. Yeah, he was going at it left and right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was not a slew foot. It was a dive, and they called it. So, and I don't know whether.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, like Ferraro pointed out, like Colson had a good dirty penalty.
Oh, very dirty penalty.
Yeah, these guys were trying to disguise a lot of what they were doing because the Russians know Podkolzin and Amirov are physical compared to the Swedes on the other side, and they were trying to really take advantage. But the Swedes power play, man, Alexander Holtz and Lucas Raymond just passing to each other, and Holtz, I mean, Holtz, it's almost hard. Skarov, I don't even know if he saw the puck a few times.
No, he's got his release is like
it's crazy. And again, Noel Gunler, the reason why I was so high on him, you can see how good his shot is. But again, he got drafted where he did because he needs to round out his game.
He's got some work. He's definitely got some
offensively, he's just tremendous.
But he's got a tool that's definitely NHL plus.
I mean, Sweden is just they're really loaded. Soderstrom, Broberg on defense, Gunler.
And they're loaded in net.
Yeah, and
good goalies too.
Right. So, but I'll tell you one thing, and I was getting messages from Leaf fans just like oohing and eyeing about Rodion Amirov, or Amirov, as Jillian Kemmerer told us that the
I'd emphasize the middle, Michael. Come on.
Now, this is the thing. It's like, when Russ knows this, I had people sending me messages like, "Oh my God, why didn't they take Braden Schneider? What the hell is Kyle Dubas thinking?" Okay, look right now at what Amirov is doing.
Yeah, I tweeted when they drafted him because I knew Leaf fans were going to go off because they didn't really know the player. You could have watched him the year before, but if you didn't, or you didn't watch any KHL, which is, plausible, then you didn't see what it was sort of building there and what could be. He's still
people sleep, Russ.
Yeah, I know. There's still 2 years. He's still 2 years away from what he's going to be. Funky was, talking about Raymond. The one thing about Raymond that people do forget, but Ferraro did make a good point. He is such a good passer, but he has a lethal shot too. And he did start to uncork that because they kept sort of expecting Holtz to be the trigger guy. And that really does cause problems when all of a sudden Raymond's shooting on you and he's not passing it.
And thankfully, as the World Junior has done, and when it was in Buffalo, it was great to go to games on New Year's Eve to sort of kill time before, because everybody's waiting around for midnight. It's nice to have games to watch or games to go to. And tonight we have two.
Yeah, we got a late game tonight. It's awesome.
9:30. So we have two games. One is to determine first place in, I think it's Group A.
Yeah.
And that's Canada versus Finland. Both of them are 3-0. Now, obviously, Canada's goal differential with a 16-2 game is very wide. But I think the Finns, Russ, we know internationally, whether it's the World Championships, or the Olympics, or the World Juniors, the Finns play that disciplined defensive style that will drive teams nuts.
Yeah, but this is a game where Canada needs to send a message, and not physically. They need to send a message scoring-wise, and they need to put up points against Finland to kind of show them. Because if they don't, then all of a sudden there's maybe going to be a little worry about what is Canada going to do when they start facing the crossover teams, because they've had it easier than the other teams. They could have all the talent in the world, but when you're not facing the same kind of competition in every game, it might take them a little while to to play their best as a result. So there is a worry about that.
Yeah, and the other game, the late game, is Sweden versus the U.S., which I believe will determine first place depending on if it ends in regulation or overtime.
And who's good. There's a whole factors. There's a lot of factors, which I'm not going to talk about all of them because it's too complicated.
But U.S.
This is one of those games that this is a Spencer Knight kind of a game.
I'm not putting it all on Spencer Knight. I am not doing that.
He needs to have a good performance like he did last time.
It doesn't matter. It is not all on Spencer Knight. I will disagree with that. You know what it's on? They need to score some goals, and Hugo Hagefeld is a very good goalie, but they need to score some goals. If they don't score more than 2 goals, they're not winning this game.
Well, the question is, Russ, whether he'll play at all because he played last night. It's back-to-back games for Sweden, so
they'll be fine if they don't play him. Right. But I have a feeling they still might play him.
Right. I mean, most of the time when it's the last couple games of the round robin, unless it's absolutely necessary, they won't play the number one.
Yeah, but you want that top seed, you do, and And that's the thing. It drastically changes your path, especially that first game. You don't want to face the wrong team in that first game, man.
Now,
First quarterfinal game.
Now, so we'll be watching those games tonight. Now some news and notes. Bill Meltzer reported some interesting news out of Flyers camp. Anthony,
yes.
Sam Moran, who is a defenseman, has been a defenseman for his entire career. They're looking at potentially playing him on the left side this year. Now,
it's not a potentially thing. They are doing it. They are going to be. He is no. Well, they're not listing him as a defenseman any longer. No. He is now been converted. He is now a converted.
Anthony, when they announced him on the conference call, they said forward Sam Moran. They said that.
Yep. They wanted you to know that this is the direction that we're going with Sam, and it's some interesting comments certainly in this regard. And again, the Flyers, there's a lot of different permutations and angles to look at this with the decision with Moran. He has obviously a lot of this is predicated off of multiple ACL injuries that he has had in his career. I think at this point now, and considering the Philadelphia is now put up in the defensive wave in Philadelphia with the prospects beginning to push upwards, his window of opportunity to get a regular NHL gig as a defenseman, at least with the Flyers, after he signed his 3-year deal last year, is beginning to dwindle. So Philadelphia is trying to get what they can, certainly at this point, in terms of what are the things that Sam does particularly well. And one of the things is that he's got an exceptionally physical game. He's 6'7". Philadelphia's lineup, as we saw against the Islanders last year, struggled. They struggled in the postseason period against a Montreal team that played them physically, and the Islanders who took them up a whole nother level. So they're looking at it as the point of view of they want to have another tool in their toolbox for their bottom six, and that Sam can do one of two roles, I think, in this case. Number one, provide them that physical presence. Pseudo enforcer as well. Sam is not.
He'll be an enforcer.
He'll be basically, for all intents and purposes, an enforcer. I could see him in a fourth line role as a support guy on a high forecheck, where his length and range. If you send a guy like Nicolas Aube-Kubel in as a missile, I wouldn't put Sam in as the main guy on a high forecheck, but as a support guy to potentially harry lanes and to pinch guys along the boards, you can certainly do that. And it's also, I think, a little bit of a message as well to some of the other players in the bottom six. They specifically listing him at left wing. If you're looking at the Flyers lineup, the bottom six left wings right now include, obviously, you would take a look at Michael Raffl. But Raffl is
he can play anywhere.
He could play anywhere. They could have him at center. They could have him at right wing. Beyond that, then you're looking at, if they're looking at not as a 1-for-1 replacement, but if, we all saw last year in the postseason, AV had quick hooks at time for JVR. And if they decide that physicality is necessary, and now they've got Oscar Lindblom back, and if Lindblom is back, that gives Vigneault a little more flexibility on that left side to say, hey, if JVR is not giving them more than just what he does already, he's the guy potentially who I could see drawing out, and they convert the lines a little bit differently in that circumstance.
Here were the important things I pulled out of that call. First one was apparently, I think this may have happened in, I don't remember the month, but anyhow, Moran spoke to AV at AV's request, and Moran said he was probably the only guy left in town because he wanted to rehab and he wanted to stay and make sure he could try and play this year. And AV pulled him aside, and I could see, listen, this is classic AV where he's probably telling him, we need a physical presence, and we think you could bring that, but we need you as a forward. So guess what? If you want to make this team, you're going to be a forward.
And he said flat out, Russ, I mean, we heard it from Sam in the press conference that he's fighting for his NHL career.
Right.
He said it. In there. This is what he feels that he needs to do. He still thinks he can be an NHL defenseman, but we know realistically at this point now, if he's going to graft himself into this Flyer lineup in some manner, in some role, this is it.
Yeah. The other big things that he said was he admitted, look, I'm not the same physically. he says he's a good enough skater to keep up, which he is, because straight line is fine. It's just everything else you have to do as a defenseman, he was going to have trouble with, especially post injuries. He had trouble with it early on, then he finally got good enough at it, and now injury wise, he wasn't going to be there. But he's watching tapes of Matt Martin, and that's his role model right now to learn the position. And so
same jersey number 2. I mean, I'm sorry. No, Martin. Did Martin ever wear 55 at some point of his career? I thought he did. So. No, he didn't. Okay, fine. No, he said.
But
he didn't. But
this is his role model, and this is what AV wants, because AV saw them get pushed around a little bit in the playoffs. Morin. Now, one interesting thing Morin was talking about is because he has a long stick that he could break up a lot of plays. The interesting thing about that is in rookie camp, in his first rookie camp, Tim Panaccio, and there was somebody else noticed he had a stick that was way too short for Sam Morin, who's 6'7". And we mentioned to him that he could petition the league to get a longer stick. And he goes, "Oh, really? I'm going to have to talk to my agent about it." And now all these years later, it's finally coming into play where he's talking about that being a big tool for him, because, he's got a huge wingspan. And if he can get his stick in between the puck, he will not only kill you in the corners, but he can get the puck out of there. And you know what? The funny thing about Morin is the same thing they used to say about Dylan McIlrath. McIlrath had a bomb of a shot. The problem with McIlrath is he can never find open ice to shoot it. Right. And McIlrath scored that one goal, that one, probably the only one in his career. Everybody went crazy as Ranger fans. Now Morin has a bomb of a shot too.
He does. Heavy. We've seen him break.
He may be able to find some open ice as a left winger to shoot that, and that could actually do something.
Or at the same time, he can also. The other possibility is you post him up in front of the net.
Yeah.
He's going to be obviously physical, strong enough to be able to deal with majority. I think of it again, but it's also the other little things that he's going to have to learn if he's going to be. If he's going to get in,
it's so much different than
exactly.
Well, let me just say this though, and then we'll move on. If moving Morin to left wing is being done as a motivational tool to James Van Riemsdyk, I think Van Riemsdyk.
I'm not just saying just Van Riemsdyk. I know. There are young players.
I know. But what I'm saying is, if it's being done in part for that, then James Van Riemsdyk's response is likely what Ray Liotta said in Goodfellas: "F you, pay me." He's making $7 million. It's up to AV to utilize a guy who, even on your third line, can be on your number 1 power play. And I don't know how it's inexplicable that in the playoffs, with their power play struggling, that they didn't use Van Riemsdyk on the power play.
But you also got you have to get to those areas, and that was one of the big problems, that James was not getting to those areas on regular shifts.
One difference, Mike, is Babcock played JVR on the power play and not much else anywhere else, but that was his choice. AV doesn't do that. You have to earn the ice time. He won't just put you on the power play no matter how good you are.
Which is why I thought Van Riemsdyk would be somebody that they would, try to trade, although easier said than done.
That's the issue. How do you make, again,
the key part
is, can you make that move? And it's not
He's Seattle bound.
I don't know about that. We're saying you think he's Seattle bound, but Seattle's got. I am not sure he's the guy that Seattle goes.
Yeah, I think he might be too passive for Seattle. Ron Francis,
especially, and at that salary, even if they got to make it to the bottom, you have to look at it and say, okay, beyond the power play, what else is Van Riemsdyk going to bring? And they're going to look obviously at the Kraken have invested heavily in the analytic scouting and analysis, as well they should. $7 million on a contract for a guy who is going to be limited. Philly's going to literally have to figure out, if they're going to get them to take him, they're going to have to include something else that they probably would rather not, if they're that hell bent on moving him.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to spend $7 to $8 million, you're going to spend it, if you're an expansion team, on a goalie, and then you might do it on a few young players that you acquire that already had a contract that maybe a team doesn't have, that are in the middle of their career. JVR's on that other side, so I don't see it happening.
Okay. Well, let's just reflect briefly with the last few minutes of the show.
Wait, Derek Brassard. We should mention Brassard.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, just the fact that he did finally sign with Arizona, and he actually, everybody's like, wait, he got more money than Chara. Don't worry, Chara's made enough money in his career. He doesn't need the money.
Why even make that it is the biggest apples versus orange comparison you could possibly come up with, and someone comes up with that.
I know. it's a good signing for Arizona. It definitely can't hurt. The other thing I was going to say is I was not only on the Flyers call today, I was on the Devils call. And the one thing I really took out of that is there could be one thing that we're overlooking with the Devils. Now, we know their defense is improved, and we know Corey Crawford's the goalie. What we didn't really know is, or think about is, with all these compacted games, the condensed schedule, they do have youth other than Subban on the blue line, and that could be to their advantage. Some of their youth and guys forwards like Jack Hughes, who put on like 14 pounds of muscle, these kinds of things could impact them and actually even put them ahead of other teams that we've not really thought about if that works out early on. If they get out of the gate hot because they've got young legs and they're playing with a high pace like they want to, it could look different than what we thought, but that's still an if.
Right, and also don't forget Heishier is still out also.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how long it takes him to get back.
And so Jesper Bratt, he's out too.
Right.
Okay, so just to finish the show, since this is the last day of 2020, let's bat around what we think was the most impactful event of 2020 in the hockey world. Obviously, with any year, it's who wins the Stanley Cup, but let's try to move past that. I think it was that third period that the Dallas Stars had. I think it was against Calgary in where they were down 3-0 headed to a game 7, and I think they scored 7 straight goals to win. That propelled a team that nobody had any kind of thought that was going to, have any kind of success to get to the Stanley Cup final and challenge Tampa Bay, before bowing out in 6 games. I don't think anybody expected Dallas to do that. And now, we see what the ramifications of that was, because Sagan is going to be out for probably most of the year, and Ben is injured. And, a lot of these guys have a lot of
they're a team that certainly is, you feel like that was probably the apex of the current group in terms of in Dallas. I would point to the game 7 against Colorado. Yes. One of the most remarkable hockey games that I've had, that I've witnessed, that I've watched. It was a tremendous contest. And a player like Joel Kiviranta, of all the possible players you could have pulled out of the hat-trick goal pool. I
still
nobody's picking that one.
I still love the Finnish announcer just going like Spanish soccer.
Yeah.
Give it on. You just go.
I'll tell you the point for me still was the Winter Classic for 2 reasons. First one was it was in a massive stadium, and Dallas fans, Texas fans were just great with it. Some Nashville fans did travel too. It was the last loud event I was at, literally, and for anything, concert or otherwise. But I learned a lot at that game. I learned that when I went into the Nashville room, they seemed like a pretty dead group. And I was reporting that on here, like, I don't like the way these guys are sort of like going about their business. And on the opposite side, I learned that Dallas was being really well coached. And I felt like there was some good upside with the coaching change with Bonus in there. And I could see the effect that Bonus was having on these guys. Because, I would be there 3 days before. And I was in. So that was the big thing. And then remember, in that game, Corey Perry got ejected. And Dallas fans were not thrilled with Corey Perry that day. And they weren't, up to that point, they weren't thrilled with Corey Perry. And then look what happened to Corey Perry later on for them.
Corey Perry became Scory Perry.
Yeah, that was like a big transformation. So there's a lot of things that happened in that weekend there that makes me think about that.
All right, guys. Oh, go, Jay. I'm sorry.
So for me, I don't know if it's a single event. I'll say it's the age of the young blue liner. You'll look at Heiskanen or Heiskanen, depending on how you want to pronounce him, taking that major step forward, especially in the playoffs. And then we saw what Cal McCarr and Quinn Hughes did last year, right? And those are the 3 guys you would expect for years, along with some other young defensemen, but those 3 especially, battling for the Norris Trophy for several years to come. And granted, there's more in the pipeline coming, but those 3 guys, especially Heiskanen, taking that major step forward, and McCarr and Hughes stepping in like veterans, to me, that's what I took out of last year and what to look forward to moving forward, given how good those three are and just how seamlessly they kind of transition to become the number one defenseman on their teams.
Yeah, and these are the nice days for Dallas, for Vancouver, and for Colorado, because all three of these players are on their entry-level contracts.
Oh, yeah.
Very soon, within the next year or two, all three of them will be making probably north of $8 million.
I mean, look, they just flashed it up yesterday. Ben Bishop, knee, due March. Tyler Seguin, hip surgeries, due April. You know, like it's going to be tough for them starting out of the gate.
It's going to be
maybe one little piece of action we didn't cover is rumors Brad Marchand may be ready for the start of camp, which originally we thought he'd be sidelined a little bit. So if Boston has a modicum of good news, I guess you could say that's the little smidge of good news for them.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I'm guessing also Marchand, they're going to slap the AO in his jersey with Chara being. Yeah. It'll be
And Chara basically said Bergeron's the captain. If he isn't, there's something.
I am passing the giant crown to Bergie.
Yes, and all warnings to the Orkin man in New England if Brad Marchand is back on the ice. Okay,
Great final joke on your part.
Actually,
you know what, exactly how we want to conclude 2020. Thanks, Mike. Way to send us off on a high note.
I'll send you up on a high note. I'm looking forward to seeing Brad Marchand in the shootout to see if he could actually carry the puck in this time.
That was beautiful. I should have forgot that one. I should have included that. That was. I looked at Rod. You and I looked at each other.
It was like, did that?
We were just like, what?
It was funny. Post game, Marchand did his best.
We're on the elevator, and we're just like, "Good God!" Did we just see that?
Yeah, Marchand did his best to try and not seem aggravated post game, but he was aggravated.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. Great show, guys. We will be back. We'll not be doing a show tomorrow on New Year's Day. We'll be back on Monday.
Hello.
And we will start doing our team previews, probably in blocks of 4 teams. We'll have some guests to talk about some of the teams in the Northeast, Central, and West. For Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, for Anthony Mangione, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz,